This is conscientious, environmentally sound death at scale. And then he's like, what in the world are you doing? You might be wondering what in the world I'm doing. Some of you may have an idea already, but essentially what I'm doing is an experiment in death. Recently, we've become plagued with a particularly bad mosquito outbreak. I think a lot of it has something to do with the rains that we've gotten over the past week or so. It's funny, as I'm talking about mosquitoes, they're swarming me right now. I'm down in our woods. For those of you that know the channel, we have about maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 acres of woods. And this seems to be the epicenter of our mosquito outbreak. And so I'll talk about what these buckets are here in a little more depth here in a minute. What we're trying to do is contain our mosquito population by non-chemical means as much as possible. Now, where do these buckets fit in? They're affectionately referred to online as buckets of doom. In other words, a little bit more demure way of putting it is mosquito traps. Essentially what we've got here is a brightly colored bucket, and in this case it's orange, filled with CO2 emitting mediums. In this case I've used dried grass clippings, but you can also use things like dead leaves or hay or straw or old sticks. I've got a stick in here too, as well as something called BTI. BTI is a type of bacteria. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. I've got that very wrong. But it's a type of bacteria that specifically targets waterborne insects, insects that lay their eggs in water. So mosquitoes, certain types of gnats, certain types of flies, but doesn't affect anything else. A lot of times you'll see old farmers put these rings, these bacteria rings, in their stock tanks. This is perfectly safe for animals. For most other insects, your pollinators, things like butterflies and bees. The only thing it targets is, like I said, waterborne insects. Specifically, not the adults. This won't kill adult mosquitoes, but it kills the baby mosquitoes, the baby larvae of these waterborne insects. And so what this bucket will do, I've split each of those little rings of bacteria, and I've put them into one of these buckets. Right now, like I said, we've got a pretty sustained period of rain as the mosquitoes are eating me. We've got a pretty sustained period of rain last week, and now it's dried off again, which is the perfect time to set these things up because the mosquitoes, and there's a ton of them, are out in force looking for places to lay their eggs. These brightly colored buckets emitting CO2, which is something they can detect, primary targets for the female mosquitoes to lay their eggs. Once they've laid their eggs in this bucket, this bacteria will have hopefully fermented by that point. The larvae of those mosquitoes feed on that bacteria and they die. They can't survive that bacteria. It kills them while they're still in the larva stage. So what we're hoping to do is just stop that exponential growth of mosquito. One female mosquito can lay how many hundreds of eggs, and each one of those mosquitoes can lay how many hundreds of eggs. It quickly gets out of control, as you can imagine. I've read up on this stuff. People swear by it. They say it works really well. So we just got ourselves a bunch of these buckets, and we're just laying them all over the place, especially here in the woods. But I'm also setting some up in the garden area as well, because the mosquitoes have started to beachhead our garden area and around our house. And it's getting to where, especially in the evenings, you just can't walk outside without getting absolutely covered in mosquito bites. It's really bad on poor little Henry. He's covered in mosquito welts just from being outside. So hopefully what we're doing here will help contain the mosquito population. I'll let you guys know how it works. I'll report back. I imagine it'll be another week or 2 or maybe even 3 weeks before we start to see results in the mosquito population. But here's hoping that this will do something. What's particularly appealing about these things is, like I was saying earlier, they're organic, such as it were. They're not dangerous to anything other than mosquitoes. They're not chemical. I know I've used chemicals on the homestead in the past, especially away from the food sources, our meat animals and our garden. By and large, I try to avoid use of chemicals altogether when I can. And that's where this stuff fits in, if it works. Again, we don't know just yet, but from all the testimonials I've read and the glowing reviews of farmers that use this type of thing in stock tanks, this is conscientious, environmentally sound death at scale that'll keep your food sources safe. So my fingers are crossed in a big way for this little donut, these little crumbles to work. We've actually had to deal with a number of insectoid pests this year that we hadn't dealt with previously. I'm reminded of the situation with the termites. You might remember a couple of months ago, I kind of freaked out when I saw a colony of termites hatching from an old dead log that used to be back there. And I went out and bought chemical termite spray, which in hindsight, probably not a good idea. I got some well-deserved flack for it on the channel. And I ended up planting a bunch of sunflower seeds in this area to help kind of draw up some of the chemicals, which, update on that, look at, we're starting to get flowers. They're just starting to pop out, and they're popping out in droves. There's a lot of these sunflower seeds. This is all from a bag of store-bought bird seed that we got at like Walmart or something. I don't even remember. Maybe it was the local co-op, but just really cheap bird seed, sunflower seed, black oil sunflower seed, bird seed for a couple bucks a bag, a huge big 25-pound or 50-pound bag. And I just spread a bunch of those seeds here. And take a look. They're starting to pop up. They look gorgeous. But more importantly, they're drawing up a lot of toxins and junk from the ground. Which is what sunflowers are noted to do very well. So to get back to my original point, we had to deal with those termites, and it was probably not the best idea of me to use the chemical spray, which is why we've been trying to avoid that as much as possible when dealing with certain pests. Like the ants. You remember the ants? Let's give you an update on those. You might remember back in the spring we were dealing with lots of fire ants to an insane degree. They were all over the place. They were a danger to our toddler. We couldn't walk 5 feet. We couldn't walk a couple yards without running into a giant mound of fire ants. And so we used my mom's formula of borax, which worked really well, especially in the garden. We only used the borax solution, which you can go back a couple videos and find that. And it worked well. We don't deal with fire ants anymore. There was a couple of really large mounds out in the front pasture that the borax alone wasn't quite taking care of them. So we did add a little bit, a marginal amount of chemical fire ant killer, and it worked. That combined with the borax, those mounds are inert now. There are no more fire ants in them. Also, squash bugs. As you probably know, if you've watched this channel, we planted our squash late this year in an effort to hopefully avoid the squash bugs that we've been plagued with every year. And as recently as last week, in the last video, everything was going great with not a sign of squash bugs, but literally the day I released the video last week, I looked under the leaves and saw dozens and dozens of little patches of red eggs for squash bugs. I can't find any now, and I'll tell you why. I remembered a tip that a lot of you gave me about an organic treatment called Captain Jack's Dead Bug that I think another YouTuber, maybe it was The Hollers, had recommended as like a really good antidote to squash bugs. That's organic. That's safe to put on your organic food, and it's not a danger to humans. It's not chemical. It's also a bacteria, much like those little mosquito crumbles are. So I went out and bought some, and I hosed down these squash plants with this stuff, and lo and behold, I've gotten to the point now to where instead of finding dozens of patches of squash bugs eggs every day, I've found maybe 1 or 2, period. Today I haven't found any. This is the first day, you know, since I've been spraying that stuff where I haven't seen any squash bug egg patches. There might be some that pop up, not that I can see, but this is a very effective treatment. Again, using bacteria, not chemicals. Bacteria that targets the pest. And thank you guys for showing this to me, because so far, I'm knocking on wood, so far this is working out wonderfully. I'm going to keep this in my toolbox for next year and just have a regular full season of squash. It is time to free the turkeys. They're big enough now, the size of small chickens, to where I'm not worried about them getting beat up or harassed too much by the rest of the flock. Before I release them, before I open this door, it's important for me to clip their wings. It's all right. When you're cutting the wings of poultry, whether it's turkey or chickens, you can look it up online, but you want to cut their wings in such a way where it doesn't actually get their wing muscles themselves, but just their outer flight wings. It's a rough way of looking at it right there, and you just want to do it on one side. If you do it on both sides, then their wings are balanced and they could still potentially achieve flight. When it's on one side, their wings are unbalanced, which makes flight very challenging. It's okay. It's all right. It's okay. I'm just giving you a little haircut. It'll be over shortly. There we go. There we go. It's all right. It's all right. It's okay. It's okay. And then he's like, what in the world are you doing? You better be nice to those young turkeys. And Lenny, I promise I'm being nice to these young turkeys. I'm actually gonna make their life really great here shortly. All right, after a lot of commotion and feathers flying, I was able to get them all clipped. I'm not gonna make a big production out of releasing them into gen pop, into the general population. I'm just gonna open this door. They can come and go as they please. The other chickens can come in and come out. They're already used to each other. They've already had the proximity now for, boy, over a month. This shouldn't be too jarring of a release. So, simple as that. Open the door, keep it open. We'll see how it goes. The one concern I have is with all of our roosters. I don't know how many roosters we have in here. 4? 5 maybe? Typically when you, oh, they're going right to Laverne, look at that. Laverne is their aunt. And they immediately go to hang out with her. That's interesting. And Laverne is kind of pecking at them. Interesting. Laverne, are you going to be nice to him? Laverne kind of took off. But they're blending right in. What do you think, Lenny? Lenny's watching on in the distance. So this is really interesting. The turkeys have been out here now for a few minutes, and they haven't been getting any flack from the regular crew, the regular chickens. None from Lenny either. Lenny's just kind of been standing back watching them. Lenny's their uncle. Biologically, Lenny is their uncle. The only real antagonist for these young turkeys has been Laverne. Laverne is their biological aunt. Right now, Laverne just left. They immediately gathered around Laverne. I think they thought She was their mom. Their mom is actually Laverne's sister. So that's easy for them to kind of go to that. But Laverne didn't want anything to do with them. She kind of pecked at them and chased them off and then ran off. All told, though, they are very happy to be out here foraging with the rest of the flock. Look at this. They're immediately getting into dust baths. Lanny's kind of presiding over and watching them. And Laverne has kind of made herself scarce. Interesting. This is an interesting kind of release here. I'm obviously not going to sit here. It's morning right now. I'm not going to sit here the whole day and babysit them the entire day, but I will check in with them often this first day. So far, this is encouraging this morning to see them kind of just go out. Oh, there's Laverne again. To see them kind of go out and really explore. They're very happy to be outside of the A-frame. Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. Keep your fingers crossed that our buckets of doom will actually do the trick with mosquitoes, and we can actually leave the house in the evening without getting covered in mosquito bites and welts, especially my poor little toddler who, like I said, he loves to be outside, and he can't be outside at all anytime past 4 o'clock without just getting covered in these bites. So we should know more in 2 or maybe 3 weeks about whether or not, about the success of those buckets of doom, and I'll keep you guys updated. So until we see you again next time, again, thanks for hanging out with us, and remember, as always, slowly, slowly.